Hey Nathan, great to see you again today.
Hey, thanks, Gene.
Hey, it's been a while since we've gotten together, and I know that you're leading the product team at AWS on Direct Connect, and we've worked together many times over the years, and just had a lot of discussions around networking in general. One of the topics that's come up lately with a lot of our customers is multi-cloud. I'm curious. I mean, what do you think of multi-cloud, and do you think it's a real thing?
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for coming up to the Amazon South Lake Union campus to sit and talk to me. Yeah, I agree. I think it's an interesting time here with the evolution of networking, especially between clouds. So, in terms of what is multi-cloud networking and is it a real thing for us? I think, yeah, for AWS's perspective, we talk about what is multi-cloud, right? So we define it as not just using kind of different SaaS products or software as a service products, but more about leveraging infrastructure as a service provider. So what you guys refer to oftentimes as the CSPs. So both using more than one CSP and having an emphasis on connecting networks for an effective multi-cloud deployment is really what multi-cloud means to us.
Gotcha. Is there anything else that is going on with multi-cloud today that you're seeing?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot that we're going to get into. We'll talk about some of the use cases, obviously, and things like that. But I guess I'll turn it back to you, right? From your perspective, working at Equinix for so long, what is multi-cloud networking? Is it a real thing for you?
Yeah, I think we're definitely seeing a lot in that area today from a networking standpoint. Obviously, hybrid cloud and connecting to multiple clouds has been pretty much going on for a number of years. It's just recently we've gotten some interest in customers asking us about how can they connect using private multi-cloud connectivity. And so the demand for this private cloud connectivity is starting to come into play. Obviously, there's customers out there, most likely today, that have been doing connecting to multiple clouds using the internet as well as private connections, and there are probably several of them out there today connecting using multi-cloud over internet connectivity. But the real challenge has been for the enterprise customers, how can they connect to multiple clouds over private connections? So for example, your AWS Direct Connect service, or from another cloud service provider like Google Cloud Interconnect or Azure ExpressRoute. These are what customers are wanting to do, be able to set up a true network between the clouds. And the problem that they're coming up against is how do they, first of all, develop the technology to do that. And of course, they could deploy a router if they wanted to on their own and try to configure it to manage these connections. But it becomes very difficult and tedious for a lot of entities to be able to do that type of thing.
Yeah.
And so one of the examples that we see with multi-cloud today, for example, a most recent announcement that was just made, a partnership between Oracle and AWS that happened just recently in the news, where Amazon is partnering with Oracle to offer their databases on AWS's infrastructure. So that's kind of a new, exciting thing that's happened. And what we're seeing is that customers now that are maybe Oracle customers, they want to multi-cloud network with AWS, right? Because they have assets inside of Oracle and they want to connect to AWS and they want to do the same type of thing inside of AWS because of the myriad of services that you offer today.
Sure. Yeah, I think you touched on a lot of interesting points there. And in terms of the private connectivity, it might make sense to do a little bit of an overview of what Direct Connect is, right? If you think about the AWS Direct Connect service or product, as you know, we've been working together with Equinix for, I think, almost 14 years now. It launched back in 2011. And originally, the product was conceptualized as something to help companies move to the cloud, right? And so the thinking was that these private large connections would be easier for moving data or applications to our cloud infrastructure as opposed to using the internet, like you were saying.
Yep.
That's evolved to what we see a lot today, especially with enterprises, is the hybrid architecture, where there's something on premise and then they connect to AWS via Direct Connect and network between those. And now, as you were saying, truly multi-cloud networking, right? Means being able to create networks with private access and private IP space between these different CSP cloud environments. And I think it's still kind of just emerging, right? Obviously, again, there's the benefits versus the internet of, we keep saying, private space. It's more secure, lower latency, and higher throughput based on the connectivity types of connections that we have. Couple all that with reduced egress costs versus the cost of actually transferring data out over the internet. We feel like Direct Connect is the way to connect all of these use cases together for customers. In terms of Direct Connect itself and what we offer, we touched a little bit on this, I think, in previous conversations around hybrid networking, but there's kind of two concepts of connectivity, whether that is a hosted connection where a partner like Equinix actually vends the connection to a customer, or a dedicated connection. And that means that the customer has to do a little bit more in terms of configuring their network themselves. And we're, as I said, building higher and higher capacities on both of these types. Our hosted connection capacity recently increased to 25 gig earlier this year. So customers can go from as little as 50 megs up to 25 gig hosted connections. And then in our dedicated connection space, we have 1, 10, 100, and now 400 gig is emerging. So it's very, very large pipes that are coming out on Direct Connect between our sites and the clouds. We also have CloudWatch Network Monitor, which allows for monitoring network paths. And we're seeing a lot of uptick from enterprises there in seeing that and having the ability to create alarming and notifications if they see issues with their networks, which also comes into play as multi-cloud evolves, right? Because you're going to be able to fail traffic over. Yeah. And then things kind of further up the network stack, like transit gateway integration with Direct Connect, has been very popular for customers that have multiple VPCs. All of this, I think, just is aligned with the market trends that we're seeing overall. Preference for private connections over the internet, and because of this, better performance, better security, and the ability to really manage the networks themselves.
Yeah, I agree with all that. Definitely, we're seeing customers, lean in towards private connectivity, and to be honest, it's not that we're opposed to internet. Obviously, thousands and millions of customers use the internet every day, and many of them use that to connect to AWS as well as into Equinix services as well. So, and some of the things that people don't know about Equinix is that we actually are one of the largest providers of internet exchange peering around the globe. But with that being said, private connectivity, obviously the things that you mentioned about higher throughput, more security, lower latency, those kind of things is what customers are really driving.
They're coming to us for,
yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, given all that, Gene, what do you think the future of multi-cloud networking looks like?
Well, I think like you just talked about, the adoption of private multi-cloud networking is ongoing, right? We see customers starting to see what's available out there. There's been some offerings a little bit here and there from other companies out there, but nothing more so on the public, internet side of thing of multi-cloud networking, but nothing really on the private side. And so I think that's really what differentiates, Equinix and our ability to help customers connect to AWS and other service providers. And some of the reasons for this shift occurring that we're seeing is really around customers who want to deploy these connections in almost like real time, right? So software-defined networking and the ability to set up private connectivity to one cloud and private connectivity to the other cloud and have them talk together in a way that allows them to pass traffic, data, workloads, whatever it may be, across from one cloud to the other. Yeah. Some of the things that are initially kind of bringing this into the fold, customers are looking at, hey, I'm in this one cloud and maybe I'm not satisfied with this cloud and I want to migrate to another cloud. So that's some of the first kind of use cases that we've seen happen in the marketplace. Could be a number of different reasons, right? Service related, could be other product offerings that they're more interested in, could be cost. Yeah. So these are things that customers are weighing out. And then the other reason is a lot of customers out there are looking at what's the best services that are available from each cloud vendor. And do they want to take advantage of those? And now they can, right? So they could set up private networking to any number of clouds that they want to, but some of the clouds that kind of stand out are obviously the top four, which is, AWS, Azure, Google, Oracle, right? And each one of those clouds have significant, things that separate them from one another as far as products and services. Customers are looking at, for example, AWS for infrastructure as a service and their serverless technologies and things that really kind of stand out from that perspective. And then other customers are looking at, maybe Microsoft for Microsoft Office 365 or Google because they have a great analytics capability. And then, of course, Oracle, we just talked about that and their ability to deliver high-performing databases. Yeah. And so these are kind of the things that we're seeing as initial trends that are swaying customers of ours jointly to look at multi-cloud.
Sure.
And then, Nathan, how are you seeing AWS customers working with more than one cloud today?
Sure. Well, as I said earlier, it's still very much emerging, but there are certainly some things that we're starting to see more and more of, Gene. One of them, kind of at a high level, I think of as what you just touched on. Insights from all kinds of different data sources, and that often aligns with the AI training models, right? So maybe you don't have all your data in one cloud, or maybe you have a bunch of data in one cloud, but you have access to GPU cycles in another cloud, and you want to create a model to train your AI engine there. And so that is starting to emerge. We're also seeing at the application level a lot of containerized applications, right? So they can take advantage of capacity of compute across multiple clouds. As I understand it, and I'm more of a network guy than an application guy, there are some sharp edges around containerization that people have to pay attention to with multi-cloud, but our point is to make it easy for those networks to talk to each other and let the application folks worry about what's going on up the stack, right? And then in general, I think that AWS is trying to simplify hybrid and multi-cloud deployments for customers. As I touched on earlier, we do some monitoring around CloudWatch network monitoring, at least for Direct Connect, so that is something that we're trying to do. And then in other parts of the company, they want to make sure that it's consistent for identity and security and governance controls across different clouds, so that as much as possible, customers don't have to worry about in this cloud environment I have to do this specific thing or something like that. Obviously, that's always going to be something you have to pay attention to because they're not all homogeneous, but to make it as simple as possible is kind of our perspective. What, from Equinix's perspective, what's motivating enterprise businesses to consider multi-cloud or private multi-cloud networking?
Yeah, so we touched on a few of them already, right? Migrations and the ability to do cloud-to-cloud connectivity. But one of the big things that we're seeing, and it kind of goes back to just networking in general, right, is operational resilience. How can these businesses create connectivity to be able to stay up and operational at all times of the day? So there's several businesses out there that it's critical for them to be operational 24/7, all year round. And any type of delay or outage of any type, it could impact their business significantly. So, the cost of doing a multi-cloud private networking setup, that part, we've been able to conquer that challenge here at Equinix, and we'll go into that in a little bit here in a minute. But there is a cost element, right? Whenever you're building out high availability, you're having to look at multiple connections to, the different clouds. And so in this case, customers are willing to do that, right? They're willing to say, hey, I have all my infrastructure inside of AWS, but I need to have some other connectivity in another cloud. And so they'll be able to, use AWS as their primary, for example, cloud, and they'll use another cloud as their secondary, but they have that there just in case for insurance purposes as a backup option in case something catastrophic was to go on. The other one is, you just mentioned it, enterprise AI development, right? So there's high performance connectivity that is needed and required for, as you mentioned earlier, for machine learning, advanced GPUs that are in the marketplace and CPUs for high performance compute. those systems run better on private connectivity because of what we had mentioned earlier, the high throughput, the low latency. Those are things that some of the customers are looking at right now. And how can they leverage, for example, I have a lot of GPU and CPU resources available to me at Amazon or AWS, but there may be a time where some of these things, because they're in such high demand, I need to scale into another cloud and use some of their resources or vice versa. Right. And so we're seeing that as one of the emerging use cases. And then finally, one of the more interesting things that we didn't think that was going to happen was customers that are looking at mergers and acquisitions, right? So a lot of M&A is going on in the financial industry, healthcare, software, IT industry, right? And so when a company acquires another business, they may not be connected to the same cloud that they are, right? So you maybe have a full AWS. The company acquiring this company may be in AWS, and the company they're acquiring may be in Microsoft or Google. Right. Well, how do you network those together so that your operations are seamless, and you're able to have business continuity going forward? And so we see this as a way to be able to do that and deliver multi-cloud networking privately for these companies.
Okay, so what then, I mean, you talked about this already, but what do you believe makes Equinix well positioned to support customers with private multi-cloud networking?
Well, I'm glad you asked that, Nathan, because obviously AWS is a big part of that. But Equinix is, we've been in business for a little over 25, we had our 25th anniversary about a year ago, going into our 26th and 27th year here soon. But what really separates us is the network of data centers that we build out. And we're known as the world's digital infrastructure company. And there's a reason for that. We've actually built out about 260 plus data centers across the globe. We're in 70 plus markets, in some of the largest markets that you can think of. And we're in 33 countries. And so we really have a global reach for our customers. And most of our enterprise customers are excited about doing business with us because not only do we have all these data centers, right? We also are a neutral provider. And what that means to our partners is that we're not picking one or the other over one or the other. And so what's happened over the course of time is that we've actually had a lot of network service providers or telecom companies start to build into our data centers globally. And so we're able to offer customers the ability to choose who they can connect to from a networking standpoint back to their home office or branch office, regional office, whatever it may be. And then also on top of that, we brought in all the largest cloud service providers into our data centers. So the likes of AWS, Microsoft, Google, the ones we've mentioned, Oracle, and the list goes on. So we have, I believe, over 2,000 cloud and IT operators that are built into our facilities globally. Similar number of network service providers as well. So it's a lot of choice and options for customers to leverage. And what that means is it helps them to not only build out their networking strategy in a way that they can, start to look at multi-cloud as an option, but it also helps them to lower their cost because we're delivering a lot of these services that would normally cost more in the marketplace if they were outside of our facilities. We have 60 points of presence. We built this carrier-grade network globally as well to stitch together all of our data centers. It's called Equinix Fabric.
Okay.
I won't get into a lot of details on that today because it's a global network though, and it's redundant and has SLAs that come with it that are industry-leading SLAs. And so what customers can do is they can actually connect to not only themselves, but other partners. They can connect to the network service providers I just talked about, as well as the cloud service providers in any one of these given markets that we have. And so with 60 points of presence and 70 plus markets, we pretty much cover most of the globe, and we're constantly adding new points of presence to help serve our customers as we go along. The ability for us to deliver carrier-grade layer 2 Ethernet services, and we adhere to the Metro Ethernet Forum standards on this. with our Equinix Fabric. But more importantly, these connections that customers are able to build on our Equinix Fabric are software defined. So what that means is customers can literally go into our portal and start choosing what location they want to connect to and from.
Pretty
right?
quickly, I assume.
Quickly, within, in many cases, less than 5 minutes. And so this really provides an agile environment for customers to come in and be able to build their networking strategy using Equinix tools to do so. On top of that, we've actually developed another service, and we'll get into that more here as we go along, but it's called Equinix Fabric Cloud Router, or what we call FCR.
Right. You say FCR is probably a little bit easier to
Yeah,
say than
it's a little
Fabric Cloud Router.
exactly. Yeah. So FCR. So what it is we recently launched the service about a year ago, and this is the service that really enables this private multi-cloud networking that we've been talking about today. Right. So this sits in the middle. It acts as the traffic cop to allowing connections to connect to one another, the clouds to be able to send traffic from point A to point B, from one cloud to another cloud and back, right? So for example, in AWS, you might have your virtual private cloud, right? In Azure, you might have your VNet. How do I stitch those together using private connectivity? Well, you can do that with Equinix, and you can do that with the Equinix Fabric Cloud Router. And so it's a pretty amazing thing that we've come up with, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go along.
Yeah, so Gene, tell me, how does the Equinix Fabric Cloud Router help customers enable that private multi-cloud networking?
Yeah, so the benefits, we talked about Fabric Cloud Router being part of our Equinix Fabric. So it's really interesting on how we developed this service. It's a virtualized routing construct that actually is built right on top of our Fabric switching, telco grade switching infrastructure. And so it's not run on a virtual machine or anything like that. It's literally part of our telco grade, carrier grade network that we built globally. And so customers will set this up. It's secure. It's virtualized routing on Equinix infrastructure, as we talked about, but it also it allows for customers, as we just mentioned about software-defined networking. Same thing with Fabric Cloud Router. You can go in and start building your assets for your networking with Fabric Cloud Router by saying, hey, I want a Fabric Cloud Router in Seattle. Okay. I also want one in New York. And we can connect those together, right? And that's called an IP WAN when we connect those metros together. But also the one in Seattle is connected to, let's say, AWS, and it's connected to Microsoft Azure. And the same could apply in New York. So the benefit of that is that now the customer has private multi-cloud networking in Seattle for maybe its customers, partners, its own people to connect to and leverage those cloud resources right at the footsteps of their door. Well, the same thing, if they had an office in New York, they could apply that same thing in New York and be able to do that there. So you lower the latency in each region that you're trying to connect to, but they can also connect together as well. And so you can actually pass traffic between those two Fabric Cloud Routers as well.
And that all stays on the Equinix Fabric.
It does, yeah. So that's the unique thing about it, is it'll stay on Equinix's secure, carrier grade network, and it allows them to privately connect to the clouds without having to use the public internet to do that.
Right. Can you tell me, I heard there might be some sort of 7-day free trial through the AWS Marketplace for Equinix Fabric Cloud Router?
Yeah, no, I'm glad you mentioned that. I mean, it wasn't one of our, big topics of the day, but we did recently launch the Fabric Cloud Router on AWS's Marketplace. It's our first digital offering on your marketplace. So it's pretty exciting for us to see something like this, be a part of the marketplace and be able to offer customers this capability that we've talked about today with private networking to AWS and whoever else they want to connect to. And we think it's going to be a successful, offering for customers. And there are a lot. The great thing about it is that we're offering this, like you said, a 7-day free trial. So if you wanted to go in there and try it out, set up a lab environment or test it for the next 7 days and see what it does, It'll walk you through on how to connect not only your direct connect services, but whatever cloud you wanted to connect to privately. It'll allow you to walk through those steps of creating those connections.
I assume there's going to be a link on whatever platform we're showing this video on, so hopefully customers can find out more about it.
Yeah. We'll definitely put a link into the material, make sure that that's accessible to everybody listening here today on the webinar.
Nice. Very cool.
Yeah. So hey, it's been great today, Nathan, talking a little bit about multi-cloud private networking and how it differentiates from multiple cloud networking or even connecting multiple clouds over the internet. Appreciate your insights and talking about the perspectives and the future trends of multi-cloud from an AWS perspective. And I'm just excited about our ability to work with Amazon going forward, not only with AWS Direct Connect services, but the benefits that would come from hybrid, and private multi-cloud strategies that we're working on together with our customers. So thank you again, Nathan, for coming here today, and it was a pleasure talking with you about multi-cloud.
You bet. Thanks again for coming to Seattle.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.